Now, for pretty much any role, the interviewing process is quite standard in the sense that there's an application, there's some online tests, and followed by an on-site. So the only common thing, denominator to all of this is the behavioral part of the interview, into which they put a lot of emphasis on these STAR questions, which I will explain next. Now, when it comes to the STAR interviewing method, there is a ton of information on the internet, and there are a ton of technical aspects of all this process, and even people giving precise examples of behaviors that you should use here. However, I won't be focusing on any of this, simply because I believe the most important part of this whole thing is to practice them. So before going into the inevitable so-called technical part of these things, let me re-emphasize that Marriott is all about creating exceptional experiences, and this is for an applicant. This simply means to have exceptional communication skills, and for the given role, of course. And the one word that should summarize this would be to be really good at storytelling. Now, assessing someone's storytelling capabilities and their overall communication skills is not an easy quest, and this is why they prefer to do this at the on-site interview. So I've heard people saying that the hiring team at Marriott asked them to prepare a success story for the on-site interview, and this is where I would like to start my explanation of how to prepare on these behavioral questions. So I would start by saying that, for example, take that success story or the main highlight of your career, then spend as much time, up even 1 hour, even more than 1 hour, to write down everything about it, but really everything about it, and then start summarizing into the following format. Start by mentioning the situation that you're describing there. So describe the situation as briefly as possible, but keep the narrative format. Then describe the tasks that you had to perform for that situation. And by the way, you could use the same narrative format as for the first, and you could even link the first two sections together if it makes more sense in your case. Then the third step here would be to mention the actions that you had to take during that for the described situations and for the tasks you earlier referenced. And finally, mention the result that was the consequence of those tasks and that actions that you had to take. So why such a format? Well, it's, to be fair with you, it's because it's a very it's one of those things that recruiters love to have a structured framework for somebody to explain something, because it touches all the major points that they want to highlight. So okay, so once you've done presenting your success story, the highlight of your career, using the STAR format, using those 4 paragraphs, in my opinion, you should go ahead and prepare another 3 or 4 stories to have a total of up to 5 stories. And the reason why I'm saying this is important, because during the behavioral part of the interview, there will be multiple questions you will be asked to answer, and when you're asked a behavioral question, if you choose to apply the STAR method to answer it, then you should spend the most brain cycles on properly structuring your presentation, not to spend most of your time trying to remember what was the specific scenario from that story that you're trying to remember about. So this is why preparing for this behavioral interviewing part is very important, to prepare those stories, those specific stories. And even furthermore, I will give you some examples of the most used behavioral questions that are being asked at Marriott, but also in other places. And you can, for example, also go ahead and try to answer them and basically try to link one of your stories with one of these questions. So again, just to summarize here, so the first step would be to work on your stories, try to write as much as possible about them, then summarize them using the STAR method, using the situation, the task, the action, and the result. And then finally try to give at least one answer to, let's say, the 20 most common behavioral questions. All right, so now that I explained the hardest part of this thing, now let me also tell you that you should also probably prepare a few questions for them. And one method that I know here is used to brainstorm to find your best questions that you would like to ask them is the method of 4 C's, in which basically I give you 4 areas with some example questions that you may choose to ask Marriott during your interview.